York. But perhaps there should be a new reality show about the housewives of Wall Street, because while all the bickering continues on Capitol Hill about the budget, few people are focused on where the other money has been going, the billions in taxpayer dollars doled out by the Fed during the bailout. A new story in Rolling Stone details the jaw-dropping amount of financial aid that went to millionaires and billionaires, including two very wealthy Wall Street wives. The piece is written by Matt Taibbi, a contributing editor at the magazine, and he joins us now in studio with more. So Matt, it's good to see you. As I was telling you before, we were all fighting over getting you on so we could talk about this. So explain to all of us the breakdown. How much money are we actually talking about here?
For the overall bailout,
yeah.
or
for what went to these wives? For what went to these people?
For these particular individuals, it was $220 million. But just a little bit of backstory on this. For years, people in Congress have been fighting to open the Fed's books and have been unsuccessful. Last year, Bernie Sanders and Ron Paul succeeded in getting a small window of a time period from 07 to 09 open from the Fed's history, and they have the records basically of the entire bailout period. And this covers 21,000 transactions, trillions of dollars in loans. And this is what we did is we looked at the craziest names in the list, and the craziest ones were these two housewives that will. Wives of Morgan Stanley executives, Christy Mack, who's the wife of John Mack, who at the time was the CEO of Morgan Stanley, and her and Susan Karchis got a $220 million TALF loan to invest in student loans and commercial mortgages.
So I want to read viewers a quote from the story that you put together. A key aspect of TALF is that the Fed doles out the money through what are known as non-recourse loans. Essentially, this means that if you don't pay the Fed back, it's no big deal. I think for anybody that seems really outrageous. Why isn't anyone looking into this with a harder line, and why isn't it something that people have to pay back?
Well, this was ostensibly this program, the TALF, was designed to get the frozen credit markets going again. This was late in 2008. The banks were not lending to car dealerships and consumer outlets, and so they wanted to provide an incentive for banks and hedge funds to lend. And so they basically said, look, if you buy loans, you can keep 100% of your investment gains, but we'll eat 90% of the losses. And that's how they did this. If you buy the collateral, you give it to us. If it goes up in value, you take them back. If it doesn't, if it goes down in value, you leave it on our books, and we'll eat the losses. And that's how it worked.
So according to your article, one of the banks that got financial help during the bailout was an Arab Banking Corporation of Bahrain. So explain to all of us why that is significant. Why would they even be on the list?
Well, that's what we can't figure out. With the people who actually turned me onto the story were Bernie Sanders' office, and they're looking through this list, and they find not only a number of foreign banks. There's the Bank of Bavaria, the Arab Bank of Bahrain, which was 63% owned by the Libyan Central Bank. They got a $35 billion loan from the Fed, a low-interest loan. There were foreign car companies, Mitsubishi, Volkswagen, Toyota. So at the same time that we're bailing out GM and Ford, we're providing billions and billions of dollars in assistance to foreign car companies. It doesn't make any sense at all, and we haven't gotten any answers as to why they were doing that.
So you didn't get answers to that. What else were you able to uncover that you weren't able to get, I guess, light completely shed on?
Well, there's just the names on this list are really startling. Aside from Christy Mack and Susan Karchis, you have Wayne Huizenga, who's the former owner of the Miami Dolphins. He's on this list. He has an enormous loan. John Paulson, who you might remember is the hedge fund guy who was tied up with Goldman Sachs in that crazy Abacus deal that Goldman ended up getting fined, $600 million for. He got an enormous emergency loan from the Fed. There's dozens and dozens of hedge funds that have Cayman Islands addresses. So in other words, here you have companies that are basically evading U.S. taxes by getting Cayman Islands addresses.
Sure, shipping it off.
Right, and we're subsidizing it by giving federal loans to these people. So it's a crazy, crazy system. As Senator Sanders said, the Fed has basically turned into the central bank of the world. We're no longer really engaged in developing United States interests. It's really just a series of random loans given out to various wealthy interests.
So where is the outrage in this? I mean, how come nobody's going to go to jail? And if anybody reads this article in D.C., in Rolling Stone, and sees all of this, who's going to go after these people to say, hey, you know what, you got to give the American people their money back?
Well, there are a number of reasons why this hasn't inspired the kind of outrage that you would expect. One is that it's incredibly complicated. Two, the Fed is going to come back with an argument and say, look, these programs worked. The credit markets were frozen in 2008, and now they're unfrozen. Well, the response
not because
to
these
that,
two Real Housewives of Wall Street went shopping?
Right. It's because the Fed threw $1 trillion at the problem. They just happened to allow a whole bunch of millionaires to get in the middle of these transactions and make money off it. That's the outrageous part of it that people don't really understand. They essentially gave a middleman status to all these connected insiders to make free money off the Fed during the bailout process, and it really is outrageous. And I think it's something that Americans don't really understand all that well.
Is it something you plan to continue to follow? I guess follow
Sure,
the cash to see where it leads you.
Yeah, I think there are a number of people who are very, very interested in finding out a lot more about these transactions, and as that news comes out, I think reporters like me will be happy to put it out there.
All right, and the two ladies that you keep bringing up, have they given any statements about the cold hard cash that they got? And
no, I couldn't get any comment from either one of them. I tried to contact the company that they were involved with that invested in these loans, and they wouldn't give a comment either. I think it's when these people did these loans and they took these bailout monies, I don't think they expected that it would ever become public. Remember, at the time, all these transactions were going to be confidential. They only became public because of an act of Congress. So I think this is a big surprise for a lot of the people who are on this list. They never expected this to come out.
And now that it has, the type of backlash that they're probably going to be subject to, I think is pretty scandalous.
Yeah, well, I mean, in my mind, I think there probably should be more of a backlash. When you think about all the controversy that we have out there now about a few $1 billion in the federal budget, people are talking about killing NPR for over a few $100 million. And here you have not a few $100 million, not even billions, but trillions of dollars. I mean, Citigroup alone got over $2 trillion in rolling overnight emergency loans from the Fed during this period. And people are worried about a few $100 million in the federal budget. So I think there's a misplaced outrage towards regular federal expenditures and not enough towards these bailout monies.
Where can regular Americans actually get involved in this process? I mean, right now, we're doing segments on the fact that gas prices are going up so high. That's what really affects people. How can people, regular people, everyday people, get their ire up about this when they're struggling so much about their own critical needs day in and day out?
Well, there are a lot of people who argue that the Fed's spending actually has had an impact on those gas prices, because a lot of this money that has come from the Fed that's pouring into the system through the Fed's low interest rates and quantitative easing that has ended up in the market by way of commodity speculation. That's where it's coming out on the other end. Wall Street's getting this money cheap from the Fed. They're investing in oil futures and natural gas and all that, and that's driving commodities prices up. And I think people have to realize that these are not sort of victimless activities, that when the Fed does this stuff, it ends up somehow coming out of their pocket in the end.
All right. Well, Matt, it's great to have you on. As I said, we were all fighting to get you on our different shows around here.
Thanks,
it's a great read, so I encourage everybody to check out Rolling Stone. Matt